Well, good morning. It's a real honor to be here with all these fabulous speakers and all of you here participating and wanting to learn more about communicating and networking and educating and dispensing with ignorance and making this a better society. Let me just give you a little bit of background on myself, why I've come to do some of the things that I've done. First of all, I'm 57 years old, just turned 57. Let's go back when I was age 10. My family had just moved to Belmont, Massachusetts, a suburb of Boston. And I was one of two black kids in the entire school. Myself in 4th grade and a little black girl in 2nd grade. So I didn't see a whole lot of her. Most of my friends were white, well, they all were white, and most of them were in like 4th or 5th grade. So a lot of my guy friends had joined the Cub Scouts, and they invited me to join. I said, sure. I joined the Cub Scouts. On Scout Day, we had a march from Lexington to Concord, Massachusetts, to commemorate the ride of Paul Revere. And my den mother let me carry the American flag. So as I was marching with my fellow scouts, Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, and Brownies, I was the only black scout in this march. Somewhere down the parade route, as we're marching, I began getting hit with bottles and rocks, soda pop cans, and debris from the street by a group of white spectators over here on the sidewalk. Not everybody, just one particular group. There were kids and adults. And I assumed that these were kids and their parents. I didn't know. But what I assumed was those people over there did not like the Scouts. I did not realize that I was the only scout getting hit. That's how naive I was. Until my den mother, my cub master, and my troop leader and pat leader all came back and huddled over me with their bodies and escorted me out of the danger. And I kept saying, well, why are they hitting me? Why are they hitting me? All they would say is, shh, move along, Daryl, move along, it'll be okay. They never answered my question. So I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. Maybe they're testing me because I'm new. I've only been here a couple months. All right, or several months. But when I got home, my mother and father were cleaning me up and putting Band-Aids on me and asking me, how did you fall down and get all scraped up? I told them I didn't fall down. I told them exactly what happened. For the first time in my life, my mom and dad sat me down and explained to me what racism was. I didn't even know the word at age 10. And I'm an only child. So I only had my mom and dad to help me get answers to questions or solve problems, etc. I didn't have any big brothers or sisters to learn things from. My mom and dad always told me the truth. They never lied to me. But on this day, in 1968, when they told me why I was being hit, I literally thought my mom and dad were liars. I did not believe them. In my 10-year-old mind, having never experienced anything like this before, I could not fathom how someone who had never laid eyes on me, someone who had never spoken to me, someone who knew absolutely nothing about me, would want to inflict pain upon me for no other reason than this, the color of my skin. It made no sense. People don't do things like that. So my mom and dad had to be lying. I didn't know why they were lying, but they were lying. Well, 1968 was a very turbulent year. About a month and a half later, on April 4th of that same year, Martin Luther King was assassinated. And then the whole country went up in racial violence and flames and burning and looting and a lot of mayhem. And while I still did not understand why certain people had an issue with color and race, I realized that my parents were right. And you could see it on both sides of the street in all the races. So I formed a question in my head. How can you hate me when you don't even know me? And that question remains with me today as an adult, 47 years later. Now let me skip ahead. In high school, I experienced some other racial incidents I won't go into because of time, but I began collecting everything I could get my hands on to help educate myself. There were no classes like Race 101 or something like that, They still don't exist. But I would buy books on black supremacy, on white supremacy, on the Nazis in Germany, on the neo-Nazis over here, on the Ku Klux Klan, any number of people, just to try to learn, where does this ideology come from? Where is it going? How can it be addressed? So I graduated high school in '76. I went on to college, to Howard University in Washington, D.C., where I got my degree in music and graduated from there in 1980. Ever since, I've been a performing professional musician. That's how I make my living. So while music was is my profession, race relations became my obsession. Because I still had that question: how can you hate me when you don't even know me? Well, in 1983, I'm 3 years out of college, country music had made a resurgence in this country. A lot of bars and places where you would play had gone from top 40 and disco and whatever else to country music. So I joined a country band. And I was the only black guy in this band, and consequently, the only black guy in many of the places where we performed. So one night we're performing in this place called the Silver Dollar Lounge in Frederick, Maryland. It's a truck stop place. Motel, the lounge in the bottom, restaurant, gas station, all this kind of stuff for truckers on the highway. And the Silver Dollar Lounge is an all-white lounge. When I say all-white, I do not mean that black people could not go in there. What I mean is black people did not go in there. And that was by their own choice. And it was a good choice because they were not welcome. Well, here I am in the Silver Dollar Lounge, playing with this band. Now, the band had been there before. I had just joined the band a couple months back, and my first time in here. Well, on the break, after the first set, I come off the bandstand. I'm walking across the dance floor to go sit down at the table with the guys in the band. And this white gentleman, probably in his mid to late 40s, gets up from his chair, walks across the dance floor, and puts his arm around my shoulder. And I stop and turn around to see who's touching me. And he says, "I really enjoy your all's music." I said, "Thank you, sir, I appreciate that." Shook his hand. He goes, "I've seen this here band before, but I ain't never seen you before. Where'd you come from?" I explained to the gentleman that I just joined the band. It was my first time here. He said, "Well, man, I really like your music. This is the first time I ever heard a black man play piano like Jerry Lee Lewis." How many of you all ever heard of Jerry Lee Lewis? A few people. Okay, for you young people out here who've not, I'm sure you've heard songs like Oldies but Goodies, they call them now. Goodness Gracious, Great Balls of Fire, or A Whole Lot of Shaking Going On. If you think about that rollicking piano in there from the 1950s, that's Jerry Lee Lewis. And I was kind of taken aback. I was not offended, but I was kind of taken aback by his question. He said, "This is the first time he ever heard a black man play piano like Jerry Lee Lewis." And I said to the guy, I said, "Well, where do you think Jerry Lee Lewis learned how to play?" And he says, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Jerry Lee learned that style of playing from black, blues, and boogie-woogie piano players. That's where rock and roll and rockabilly came from." "Oh, no. Jerry Lee invented that. I never heard no black man play piano like that, except for you." And I said, "Listen, I'm telling you, man." I told the guy that I knew Jerry Lee Lewis personally. He's been a good friend of mine since I was 13 years old. He's told me himself where he learned how to play. The guy didn't buy it. He didn't buy that I knew Jerry Lee. He didn't buy that Jerry Lee learned things from black people. But this guy wanted to buy me a drink. Now, I don't drink, but I agreed to go back to his table and have a cranberry juice. So I'm sitting there with him. He had another guy sitting with him. He orders my cranberry juice. The waitress brings it. He takes his glass, and he clinks my glass and cheers me. And then he says, "This is the first time I ever sat down and had a drink with a black man." Well, the first thing that occurs to me is, this gentleman is having a night of firsts. How? And I'm thinking to myself, how is it, in my 25 years on the face of this earth, I had sat down with thousands of white people or anybody else and had a beverage, a meal, a conversation. This guy was in his mid to late 40s. He never sat down with a black guy before, And so I wasn't being facetious. I was just curious and naive. I said, "Why?" He didn't answer me. He stared at the tabletop. I said, "Why?" His buddy said, Tell him. I said, "Tell me." He looked back at me just as plain as day, and he said, "I'm a member of the Ku Klux Klan." Well, I burst out laughing because I did not believe him. Like I told you, I bought every book on the Klan. I know more about the Klan than most Klansmen know about the Klan, and I'm being serious about that. all right? And so, it's not Klan behavior to embrace a black guy and praise his piano playing and want to hang out with him and buy him a drink. So, I figured the guy's pulling my leg. So I'm laughing, he goes inside his pocket, pulls out his wallet, and hands me his Klan membership card. I look at this, I recognize the Ku Klux Klan insignia, which is a red circle with a white cross and a red blood drop in the center. And this thing is for real. So I stop laughing now, right? I feel, it wasn't funny at that point. So I give it back, and we talked about the Klan and some other things. And he gave me his phone number and wanted me to call him anytime I was to come back to this bar, because he wanted to bring his Klansmen and Klanswomen friends to see this black guy, his friends, right? To see this black guy play piano like Jerry Lee Lewis. So I would call him every 6 weeks whenever we were returning to that venue for the weekend. He'd come out, he'd bring Klansmen and Klanswomen, and they would watch me play. Some of them I would meet, others did not want to meet me. They just kind of like watched me from afar. So at the end of '83, I left that band, and I went back to playing rock and roll and blues and whatever else was going on in 1984. So I lost contact with the guy. I mean, it wasn't like, on my day off I'd go and hang out with the Klan or something. So I had no reason to stay in contact with him. Well, about 8 years later, 1991 or so, I decided to write a book on the Ku Klux Klan and on race relations in general. And so I tracked that guy down. And what I wanted to do was go around the country and interview Klan leaders and Klan members. No book had been written by a black author on the Klan. All right, there have been a couple black authors who wrote about the Klan from another perspective. Each one escaped a lynching, one in the 1930s and one in the 1940s, but not from the perspective of sitting down and speaking directly to, face to face, their would-be lynchers. So I wanted to have that conversation. A lot of books written, or all the books written on the Klan have been by white authors who had interviewed Klan members. I wanted that experience. So I tracked down that Klansman, and I persuaded him. He didn't want to do it. I persuaded him to give me the leader of, I live in Maryland. I'm from Chicago originally, but I live in the state of Maryland. To give me the phone number and address to the Klan leader from Maryland. And the guy's name was Roger Kelly. And he did not want to give me Mr. Kelly's information. He said, Daryl, do not go there. Roger Kelly will kill you. So I assured him I would be careful. I would call Mr. Kelly, He finally gave me this information on the condition that I not reveal to Mr. Kelly where I got his personal info. I said, okay, fine. So I had my secretary. My secretary is white. Not that it matters to me, but I have to mention it because it plays into my story. I asked Mary, my secretary, to please call Mr. Kelly. She works out of my house. To call Mr. Kelly and tell him that you were working for somebody who's writing a book on the Klan. Would he consent to sitting down and speaking with me and being interviewed? Now, Roger Kelly is what you call the Grand Dragon. Let me give you the hierarchy real quick. A state leader in the Klan, we call our state leader the governor. They call theirs the Grand Dragon. Anybody who is prefixed with the word grand means that individual is a state officer. So a Grand Dragon would be like a governor. A Grand Caliph would be like a lieutenant governor. And then within the state, you have counties. The county leader is known as the Great Titan. Anybody great is on the county level. Within the county, you have districts, what they call claverns. A district leader, we would call that person an alderman, a councilman, a mayor. That individual is known as the exalted cyclops. The national leader, who we call the president, they call their national leader the imperial wizard. Anybody imperial is a national officer. So an imperial wizard is like the president, an imperial caliph is like the vice president, and then you have secretaries and treasurers and all that at each level, and then you have your just plain rank and file Klan members. So Roger Kelly was the Grand Dragon of the state of Maryland. So I told Mary, call him. Tell him you're working for somebody writing a book on the Klan. Do not tell Mr. Kelly that I'm black, unless he asks. If he asks, don't lie to him. But don't give him reason to ask. See, I wanted her to call because I had the number. I could have called him myself. But I figured he might pick up in my voice that I'm black. See, I'm not talking to you. Click. And my whole project would have ended before he even got started. I knew that he would know Mary was white by her voice. And I knew that he would not assume that a white woman was working for a black man, especially a black man writing a book on the Klan. You know, they didn't exist. So there was a better chance that he would be amenable to the idea. And of course, when he saw me, I mean, he could figure out that I'm black, right? So, in any event, she calls him. He didn't ask what color I was, and he agreed to do the interview. We set it up for the motel right above the Silver Dollar Lounge at 5:15 on a Sunday afternoon. Mary and I got there early. I gave her some money, sent her down the hall to get some soda pop, put it in the bucket of ice, get it cold, so I would be able to be hospitable and offer Mr. Kelly a beverage, provided he would come in the room and stay. I had no idea what he was going to do when he saw me. You know, would he attack me? Would he say, I'm not talking to you, and walk away? Or would he come in and do the interview? But, you know, I wanted to be prepared to be, you know, hospitable. So I had all this cold soda sitting here in this bucket of ice. And the way the room was, if you people are in the hallway, and the door is right here to the bedroom, you have to walk in, turn to your right, and the room is laid out back here. You cannot see who's in the room from the hallway until you come halfway in. I took the lamp table, took the lamp off, put it over here in the corner where you couldn't see me. Put a chair on one side for Mr. Kelly, a chair on this side for me, and I had a little bag beside me. In my bag I had a cassette player, which I set in the middle of the table so I could record this interview, and I had blank cassettes inside the bag. So I'm all prepared. Right on time, 5:15. Mary hops up, runs around the corner to open the door. I'm seated back here where you cannot see me until you come in my room. And she opens the door. In walks what is known as the Grand Nighthawk. Nighthawk in Klan terminology means bodyguard. A Grand Nighthawk would be the bodyguard to the Grand Dragon. An Imperial Nighthawk would be the bodyguard to the Imperial Wizard. This Grand Nighthawk walks in. He's dressed in military camouflage fatigues, Ku Klux Klan insignia right here, this red circle, white cross, blood drop, the initials KKK right here. He had a beret on his head, embroidered, it said Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. And then right here he had a gun. So he comes in, Mr. Kelly is walking directly behind him in a dark blue suit and tie. The Nighthawk turned the corner and saw me and just froze. Well, Mr. Kelly did not realize that his Nighthawk stopped short. He bumped into his back and they stumbled and had to get their balance, and they're like looking all around the room like, you know, something's not right here. Well, I knew what was not right. They're looking for a white guy over here, and they got me. So I got up and I went like this to show I had nothing in my hands. And I walked towards myself. Hi, Mr. Kelly, I'm Daryl Davis. He shook my hand. So far, so good. The Nighthawk shook my hand. I said, come on in. Have a seat. He came in, he sat down. So far, so good, right? The Nighthawk stood at attention to his right. And before I could sit down just opposite him, he says to me, Mr. Davis, do you have any form of identification? I said, sure. I gave him my driver's license. He looks at it, he goes, oh, you live on such and such street in Silver Spring. Now that had me a little concerned. Why is he reciting my street address? I don't need him coming by my house and burning a cross or whatever, you know. I did not want to let him know that he had unsettled me a little bit, but I wanted to let him know, don't come to my house and screw around, all right? So I said, yes, Mr. Kelly, that is where I live, and you live at, and I named his house number and his street. So that way I was leveling the playing field. In other words, if you come visit me, I might come visit you. So, and I'll probably bring the cops with me. But, so let's just, you know, keep all our visiting confined to this motel room. I didn't say that, but that was my implication in reciting his address. So I didn't realize it that day, but many months down the road, I found out. I had no reason to fear Mr. Kelly reciting my address. He happened to recognize my street because one of his members lived right down the road from me. I didn't know that. So Mr. Kelly would have to drive down my street through that neighborhood to get to that guy's house. So he just recognized the street, which is pure coincidence, that's all. Today, that same Klan member who lived down the road from my house sits in a federal prison in the state of Maine for committing a hate crime. So anyway, Mr. Kelly and I, you know, engaged in this conversation, and every time I would reach into my bag to get a fresh cassette to replenish, you know, the used tape, every time I reached like this, the Nighthawk would reach like this. And after a while, he realized there was no threat in the bag. And he relaxed. I went in and out of the bag, no problem. A little over an hour into this interview, there was a strange noise. We all jumped. And I flew out of my chair and I slammed my hands down on the table. Because Mr. Kelly was right here. And I knew that Mr. Kelly had made this noise. I didn't know what the noise was, but I perceived it to be an ominous, a threatening noise. And I knew that he made it because I didn't make it. And my mind is racing. What did I just do? What did I just say to cause Mr. Kelly to go off? You know? And I felt that my life was in danger because I could hear that Klansman's voice who gave me Mr. Kelly's information. He said, Daryl, do not fool with Roger Kelly. Roger Kelly will kill you. I didn't want to die that day. So I'm thinking all these things, and I'm getting ready to come across that table. I'm fast and I'm strong. And take down Mr. Kelly and the Nighthawk, slam them to the ground, and take away the Nighthawk's gun. Because as far as I knew, the Nighthawk was the only one that was armed. I was not armed, my secretary was not armed. I didn't know if Mr. Kelly had a weapon under his suit and tie. But all I knew was I did not want to get shot, and I did not want my secretary to get shot, so I'm going to have to take these guys down. So I hit the table, and when I hit the table, I'm looking right into Mr. Kelly's eyes. My eyes locked with Mr. Kelly's eyes. I didn't say a word to him, because I knew he could read my eyes. My eyes were speaking loud and clear. In fact, my eyes were shouting. He could hear my eyes. And they were asking him, what did you just do? Well, guess what? His eyes had locked with mine. He didn't say a word, but I could read his eyes, like telepathy. His eyes were saying to me, what did you just do? And the Nighthawk had his hand on his gun, looking at both of us like, what did either one of y'all just do? Right? Well, Mary, she's over here sitting on top of the dresser. She realized what happened. The bucket of ice next to her melted, and the soda cans shifted. That was it. That was the noise. Cans falling down the ice. And when she pointed it out and it happened again, we all burst out laughing. We all burst out laughing at how ignorant we all were. Yes, we're enemies. She's the head of the Klan, I'm a black guy. But we were in the same motel room, at the same table, talking, agreeing, disagreeing, discussing, okay? But there was a teaching moment here. Not a learning moment yet, but a teaching moment, okay? All because some foreign, and I want you to underscore or circle the word foreign, entity of which we were ignorant, we weren't aware of it, the bucket of ice, cans of soda, entered into our little comfort zone via the noise that it made. We became fearful of each other. Ignorance breeds fear. If you do not keep that fear in check, that fear in turn will breed hatred, because we hate those things that frighten us. If you do not keep that hatred in check, that hatred will breed destruction. We want to destroy those things that we hate. Why? Because they scare us. But guess what? They may have been harmless and we were just ignorant. All right, so we saw the whole chain unfold to almost completion. Completion would have been had the Nighthawk drawn his gun and shot somebody, namely me or my secretary, or had I hurt one of them. That would have been the destruction. So like I said, we all began laughing and we carried on the conversation and everything was good. At the end, I thanked Mr. Kelly for his time. I shook his hand. He gave me his Klan card and said, keep in touch. You know, I didn't say this, but I'm thinking, you know, I didn't come here to make friends with the Klan. I came here to get information. Now, he told me he did not like me. You know, he told me that he was superior to me, and black people and Jewish people were, you know, down on the totem pole and so forth and so on. But he wanted me to stay in contact with them, and you know, and let him know when the book was, you know, was finished. I said, I have a lot of other Klan people to interview around the country, but I'll give you a call when it's done. He said, okay. He wished me luck, and out he goes with his Nighthawk. On the way back home to my house, which is about an hour from where we met, I said to Mary in the car, I said, you know what? I rather like Roger Kelly. I like him. He doesn't like, she says, well, he doesn't like you. I said, yeah, I know that. But I said, but I like him. I don't like what he stands for, but I like him as a person. In fact, we have more in our common than we do in contrast. Most of what we had in contrast centered around race. He felt that his race was superior to my race. I felt my race was equal to his race. He felt the races had to be apart. I felt they could be together. I said to her, you know what? I am going to stay in contact with Mr. Kelly. I began calling him whenever I had a gig, music gig, up in his county. Say, hey man, if you're not doing anything, come out to my gig, see my band. He'd come. He'd bring his night off with him, but he'd come. And then I would invite him down to my house. He would come to my house. He lives about an hour and a half from me. He'd come down to my house. He'd bring his Nighthawk. Sometimes the Nighthawk would sit on the couch next to him and twirl his gun on his finger because he's bored, right? While Mr. Kelly and I talked. Sometimes I would invite over some of my other white friends, some of my black friends, some of my Jewish friends, just to engage Mr. Kelly in a conversation with somebody other than me. Right? We would have dinner at my table. The head of the Maryland Ku Klux Klan and I would sit down at my dining room table and have dinner, or go out and have dinner. He didn't like me, but he would eat with me. All right? So go figure that one. So anyway, this went on for a couple years. By the end of a couple years, he was coming down to my house by himself. No Nighthawk. He trusted me that much. But he had never invited me to his house. All right? If I had to run an errand up in Frederick, which is his county, I'd call him, he'd say, okay, I'll meet you at wherever. He didn't want me to come to his house. He would meet me somewhere. And then he and the Nighthawk would be waiting for me. The Nighthawk would get in the back seat, Mr. Kelly would get in my front seat, we'd ride around and run my errand. All right. After 2 years of this, Mr. Kelly got promoted from Grand Dragon State Leader to Imperial Wizard, National Leader. He began inviting me to his house. I'd go to his house and see his Klan den, where he'd have his meetings and all that kind of stuff, and take some more notes from my book. He began inviting me to Klan rallies. I'd go to these Klan rallies, watch them get all robed and hooded up, and parade around with these torches and set this big cross on fire and proclaim white power and for God, and for race, and for country, and so forth and so on. I take some more notes. So CNN knew who I was through music. They knew who Roger Kelly was through the Klan. And they heard about this black musician working with this Klansman, to write this book or whatever, and they wanted to do a story. So they said, can we come to a rally next time you go? I said, sure. So I've been going to rallies, different rallies by different Klan groups, but Roger Kelly's was the closest. So I called CNN one Saturday when I was going to one of Mr. Kelly's rallies. And they said, are you performing Friday night? And I said, yeah. So they wanted to come out and film my band to show what I do for a living, and then come to my house Saturday morning and go to this rally. So I said, okay. So they came, they filmed my band Friday night. Saturday morning, they followed me 2 hours up the road to this Klan rally. And they said, do you think Roger Kelly will even talk to us? I said, I'll do better than that. When the rally is over, I'll get Mr. Kelly to drive back to my house. That's 2 hours, out of his way, and you can interview the head of the Ku Klux Klan inside a black man's house. So, okay. So they filmed the whole rally. When the rally was over, I spoke to Mr. Kelly. He agreed to come back to my house and interview with CNN. He drove by himself 2 hours down to my house, sat in my basement, and interviewed. And this clip was shown on CNN every hour, on the hour, for 24 hours all over the world. I want to show it to you right now. Hold on one second. I'm going to show it to you right now, and I want you to pay particular attention to what Mr. Kelly says. He says, even though we do different things together, meaning he and I, it does not change my views on the Klan, because my views on the Klan have been cemented in my mind for years. That's what he says. And then he goes on to say how he believes in separation of the races, because he finds that to be in the best interest of all races. So let's listen to Mr. Kelly, and also listen to the two CNN anchor people and their commentary at the end of the clip. This is CNN.
Welcome to this final hour of CNN Sunday Morning. I'm Bob Kane, and today for Miles O'Brien.
Good morning to you all. I'm Joey Shudd.
Friendship can transcend all kinds of boundaries.
Just look at us. And two men in the Washington area are showing that even an African-American man and a member of the Ku Klux Klan can find common ground. CNN's Carl Rochelle reports.
Daryl Davis plays a hot piano. It's part of the show, and it makes him stand out. He also stands out here. Davis is one of the few African Americans you will ever find attending a KKK rally. More than attending, he is welcome.
I got more respect for that black man than I do you white niggers out there.
It's been a tough day for the Klan. Their Maryland rally found many local residents rejecting the message of white separatism. After it's over, Daryl Davis hangs around backstage with his friend, Klan wizard Roger Kelly. It's not unusual for blacks and whites to be friends, but it is unusual to find a black man and a Klan leader chatting pleasantly over an orange soda after a Klan rally. The relationship started over a book Davis was writing. His secretary set up an interview with Roger Kelly, but didn't tell him Davis was black. They talked and talked some more. Davis learning about the Klan, Kelly learning about Davis.
We get to know one another and we do different things, you know. It hasn't changed my views about the Klan, you know, because my views on the Klan's been pretty much cemented in my mind for years.
Kelly and his Klan friends go to hear Davis and his band. And Davis goes to their rallies.
I sat on the front row and I listened to each Klansman speak. Some things I agreed with, other things I did not agree with.
Davis thinks that his presence promotes badly needed understanding.
Hate stems, I believe, from fear of the unknown. And I think this is all across the board, regardless of whether it's a Klansman or anything else.
But he has no illusions about the Klan. If he did, his friend would be quick to disabuse them.
And I believe in separation of the races. I believe that's in the best interest of all races.
Does he really? Or has friendship transcended the color barrier? Listen to Kelly at a Klan rally.
I'm a Colorado man to hell on that, because I believe in what he stands for and he believes in what I stand for. A lot of times we don't agree with everything, but at least he respects me to sit down and listen to me. And I respect him to sit down and listen to him.
The strange relationship of a KKK wizard and his black buddy. In Washington, I'm Carl Rochelle, CNN Sunday Morning.
Strange. Good adjective, strange.
Certainly that.
Okay, that was the clip that was shown. I'll just leave here because I'm not showing a little clip right here. That was the clip that was shown on CNN every hour all over the world for 24 hours. And you heard Mr. Kelly say that even though he and I would do different things together, it did not change his views on the Klan. Because his views on the Klan were what? Cemented in his mind for years. And he went on to say how he believes in separation of the races, because he finds that to be in the best interest of all races. But he said something very important, another teaching moment, something that we all can take home from us today. At the end of that clip, Mr. Kelly, the imperial wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, said that he respected me. Yeah. We're enemies. He's a Klan leader. I'm a black guy. He said, we may not agree on everything, but at least he respects me to sit down and listen to me, and I respect him to sit down and listen to him. Very important. If you have an opponent, an adversary, somebody with an opposing point of view, it doesn't have to be about race. Take race out of it. Any controversial topic today, the war in Iraq, nuclear weapons, legalized pot, abortion, whatever the topic is, you're going to be on one side, somebody's going to be on the other side. All right? Sit down and listen to your opponent. Let them explain their point of view. It may hurt you. It may be so extreme it cuts you to the bone. And believe me, at some of these rallies I've been to around the country, I hear things that cut me to the bone. But give that person a platform. If you agree with them, fine, no problem. If you don't agree with them, that's fine too. You ask them to give you more clarification, more explanation as to why you should believe the way they do. And when you do things like that, politely and non-violently, there's a good chance that they will reciprocate and give you a platform to present your point of view. You make sure you've done your homework so you have all your facts together so that you can explain your platform in an intelligent and influential manner. Because at the end of the day, you each have to think about what the other person said. And if somebody says something that goes against what you have believed from day one, but a little spark happens and you think, you know, she does have a point there. You're going to begin to shift in that direction. Nobody wants to be wrong, we all want to be right. Okay? You have people, you know, both speakers prior to me talked about ignorance and education. You have people who are ignorant, you have people who are stupid. Some people define ignorance and stupidity as being synonymous. I don't. An ignorant person is someone who makes the wrong choice or a bad decision because he or she does not have the facts to make the right choice or the correct decision. A stupid person is someone who has the facts and still makes the wrong decision. Okay, so if I have a room and I paint the walls of the room and I don't put up any signs that say wet paint, stay off the walls, anybody walking into that room is ignorant to the fact that the walls are wet. And they might come and lean up against the wall and get paint on their clothes. I can alleviate that ignorance by putting up signs. Say wet paint, stay off the walls. I can tell anybody coming in that door, don't touch the walls, they're wet. So now everybody has the facts. After I do all that, somebody still goes and leans up against the wall and then wonders why he has paint on his clothes. It's because he's stupid. Okay? I gave him the education, he chose not to use it. Fortunately, there is a cure for ignorance. That cure is called education. There's no cure for stupidity. If you give somebody the education and they don't use it, there's nothing you can do until they decide to employ that education. All right? So, you heard Mr. Kelly say we sit down and talk to each other. Even after my book came out, I continued communicating with Mr. Kelly. We'd go out and have dinner and talk some more. That respect. Now understand something. I did not respect what Roger Kelly had to say. I'm not a separatist or supremacist or racist. I did not respect what he had to say, but I respected his right to say it. You understand the difference, right? Okay. So through this communication, over time, that cement that held Roger Kelly's ideas together in his mind for so many years, as he said on there, began to get cracks in it. He began thinking about some of the things, that I had said. And then it began to crumble and it fell apart. And then just some years back, Mr. Kelly quit the Ku Klux Klan. Today he no longer believes in what he said on that video. When my theory is this: always keep the lines of communication open with your enemies. Always. Don't buy into that. We don't talk to the enemy. We don't negotiate. We don't talk to the enemy. No. You always keep the lines of communication open with your enemies. Because when two enemies are talking, they're not fighting. They might be yelling and screaming and beating their fists on the table, but at least they're talking. They're not fighting. It's when the talking ceases that the ground becomes fertile for violence. So you keep the lines of communication open. When Roger Kelly quit the Ku Klux Klan, he gave me his robe and hood. What? Yeah. This is the robe of the Imperial Wizard, the same robe you saw him wearing in that video clip. This is the Klan symbol I was telling you about, the red circle, the white cross, and the blood drop. Okay? This is the Imperial Wizard's robe. And of course, this is the hood. Members who want anonymity, they don't want you to know who they are, they wear this hood, or they also call it a helmet, and they wear a mask. The mask has 3 snaps and Velcro, and they peep at you through these eyelets. If they don't care that you know who they are, you just unsnap the mask, pull it off, and their face is exposed under the hood. And you saw both types at that rally. Some people with their faces exposed, others with their faces covered. All right? It goes to show, when two enemies are talking, what can happen? You find that you have more in common than you do in contrast. You learn about each other. And you build upon the good things you have in common. And the more you find in common and build upon that, the less the things you have in contrast matter, such as skin color. All right? Now, at the end of that CNN clip, the 2 anchor people implied that I was strange. Well, that's okay. Because if being strange gets people to give up stuff like this, we all need to be strange. Okay? I'm going to show you I'm going to show you 2 short clips real quick and take a couple questions. But, you know, it troubles me a lot. You know, don't get me wrong, I'm very patriotic, I love my country. But, you know, we often brag about being the greatest country on the face of this earth. Perhaps technologically we are. All right, we have the capability here to put a man on the moon. And while Neil Armstrong is up there walking around talking about one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind, we can talk to him live from right here on Earth via satellite radio phone all the way to the moon. Everybody in here has a cell phone. Everybody in here has email. Hit a few words, hit a few numbers, hit send. You're talking to people all the way on the East Coast in Washington, D.C., or in China, or Australia, or Africa. You know, we can talk to anybody on the face of this earth. How is it that we as Americans can talk to people as far away as the moon or anywhere on the face of this earth, but some of us have difficulty talking to the person who lives right next door to our house because he or she is a different color, a different religion, a different persuasion, a different whatever. It seems to me that before we call ourselves the greatest, our ideology needs to catch up to our technology. And once we get them both up there, then we can truly brag about how great we are. We are living in the 21st century. We are living in space-age times, but there's still too many of us still thinking with Stone Age minds. Now, people say to me, Daryl, why don't you ignore the Klan? Well, apparently ignoring them has not worked. The Klan is still here. They started in 1865. Where are we? We're in 2015 and they're still here. All right? So ignoring them doesn't work. There's certain things you can ignore. You can ignore the little elementary school bully who calls you Four Eyes because you wore glasses and you started crying because your feelings were hurt. And so you ran home to your mom and your mom said, just ignore him. All he wants is a reaction. You know, if you ignore him, he'll leave you alone. You know? So you go to school the next day, he starts calling you names, you follow your mom's advice, you ignore him, and sure enough, it works. He's not getting what he wants, he leaves you alone. That's when you can ignore things, all right? But you cannot ignore discrimination, be it against another sex or another religion or race, because that is a cancer, and you cannot ignore cancer. If you ignore cancer, what happens? It metastasizes, it spreads, and consumes your body, and then you go away. All right, I'm going to show you how cancer metastasizes. This next clip is the Geraldo TV show. It's a little short clip. You're going to see 2 girls on here, 1994. Erica, age 14, Erin, age 12. Their father, the Imperial Wizard, all right, who was the Imperial Wizard at the time, and their mother, Klanswoman. Now, listen to the questions that Geraldo asked these girls, and listen to their answers. These are not the answers that will come out of the minds of a 12 and 14-year-old. You can tell the cancer has metastasized from one generation to the next generation. They've been brainwashed, all right? So let's take a look at this. And the Imperial Wizard, he attacked me a few months after this show. And we had to have a little tussle and then go to court and all that kind of stuff. And he lost, but in both places. But some months after that, he went to prison, not because of the fight with me, but he'd done some stupid things in the Klan. He got sentenced to 10 years in a federal prison out in Marion, Illinois. The family is from Delaware. I had never met them before. I knew some of these Nazis on this show and some of the other Klan people, but I did not know this family, and I wanted to meet them. After the show, I went and met them. They were cordial that day. But like I said, I ran into him a few months after the show, and it got a little testy. But anyway, let's listen to these girls. And
KKK kids, children too young to hate are being dragged into these organizations by their parents. I'd like to introduce 2 African Americans, 2 black people who have a very unusual take on this whole Klan thing. First, Daryl Davis. He's soon to publish a book which essentially states what we believe on this program, that the KKK, like all Americans, or all people in our country, has a right to speak their minds. Daryl, it is unusual that a black author would devote so much time to doing the kind of seminal Klan history that you were working on now. I won't ask you why you've chosen to do that, but I would like to ask you if in the past the hate groups, or at least the separatist groups, the KKK, etc., have they had an active children's movement? Is it like Hitler Youth, for example?
Well, the children's movement started with a fellow named Tony LaRicci of the state of Maryland, who formed the Klan Youth Corps.
And when was that, more or less?
In the early 70s.
Okay, Mike, why don't you lead out the various Klan families, and the applause is from the skinheads in our audience. Another, Donna is our next guest. Donna is a bit old. How long have you been into it, Donna?
About 2 years.
Just 2 years.
But I've always been with white pride. I believe in white pride, white power. very
Even
much.
if you didn't express it, you mean you or didn't belong to an organization, you felt that.
I took my time with choosing an organization because there are so many different ones.
And
I
which
wanted
one
to
did
make
you
sure.
choose?
Territorial Clans of America.
It's a KKK group.
Like the Ku Klux
Okay.
Klan now.
And your age?
31.
Okay, Tina, what's your story? Where do you come from?
I come from Delaware. I'm with the TKA also.
The same organization as Donna.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And this is your daughter?
2 of them.
2 girls here, and which is your husband?
And then,
Okay, Dad, could you take the kids up same way previous family did? Hi. Okay, let me talk to the kids. And your name and age?
My name is Erin, and I'm 12.
So what do you think about your parents belonging to these organizations?
I think it's fine.
Why, sweetie?
Well, I mean, they're allowed to like their race. They're allowed to be proud of who they are, too.
Does it sometimes embarrass you when they get all dressed up like that?
No, not at all.
And your friends, do your friends like it?
Yeah, my friends like my parents.
Are you going to be a member of the group also?
Yes.
Hi, and you are?
Erica, I'm 14.
And how old were you when your parents first got involved?
I don't know. My parents don't include us with the inner things that they do. I just know they're members.
Your 12-year-old sister wants to join when she gets old enough. Do you also?
Yes, I do, very much.
And why?
Because I believe that the white people are extremely hurt today in our society. You laugh all you want, it's true. I think we need to get back what everybody has taken away from us. We need equal rights.
You're obviously in high school, right? You're the same age actually as my son. He's a freshman. Are you a freshman?
No, I'm a sophomore.
Oh wow! So you must be a little bit older. Do your friends make fun of you at all?
No, not at all. My friends, like my parents, some of them also want to join.
Thanks. So you two can, if you don't mind, sit down and just talk to Dad here for a second. So Dad, what do you want for your daughters?
I just want them to be able to grow up and have some decent breaks.
Okay, Dad wants his little girls to grow up and have some decent breaks because society has taken everything away from white people, and white people need equal rights. A 12-year-old and a 14-year-old thinking like that, that's the cancer metastasizing, all right? As I said, a few years later, or a few months later, he was in prison for 10 years for some stupid stuff he did in the Klan. 3 years later, both those girls were in the Klan. They joined. You can join when you're 15. Where do you think they are today?
Prison.
Prison? Well, let me tell you real quick. 3 years later, when they were Klansmen, I took them out to Chicago, and then flew them out to Chicago, and then from there drove them to Marion, Illinois, to the federal prison, so they could visit their father and Tina, the mother, her husband. And on the plane ride back, they quit the Klan. And then in 2002, Erin was 20 years old, 12-year-old was 20 years old. And I had to do a presentation for Martin Luther King Day in the city of Rockville, Maryland. And she wanted to come and be on my presentation, but she couldn't because she was getting married and was going to be on her honeymoon. She invited me to her wedding. I went to her wedding, but she couldn't come down because she would be on her honeymoon. So we made this little short clip of her addressing the city of Rockville. This is what she had to say. You heard her at age 12. Here's her 8 years later at age 20. Now her whole family is out of the Klan. Oops.
What you just saw was a video clip taken 8 years ago that showed me, a mother in the Klan named Tina, her 12-year-old daughter Erin, her other daughter, and her husband, who was the head of the Ku Klux Klan. Today, I'm seated here in January 2002 with Erin and her husband, Harley. I recently had the pleasure of attending their wedding. Erin has a message for you.
Hi, my name is Erin and I'm now 20 years old. Me and my husband Harley would like to extend our best wishes to the city of Rockville, Maryland, as you celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. Neither me nor my family are members or are affiliated with the Ku Klux Klan anymore. When I was 15, Daryl Davis took me to Chicago to visit my father, who was then the Imperial Wizard. It was the first time that I had socialized with a black person. It was also the first time that I began to question my upbringing. If you are a parent that teaches hate or racism to your child, you need to know that you are committing the worst form of child abuse. It is wrong to try to close the mind that has not yet had the chance to be opened. If you're a child that's being taught hate or racism, you also need to know that that is wrong. There is one race, it is the human race. And together, we shall overcome.
So there's the 12-year-old 8 years later. What did I say I majored in? Music, okay? I did not major in sociology or psychology. I'm just a rock and roll piano player. So if I can do that, anybody in here can do that. You all can affect change out there. And this is what this whole program is about, bettering our society for ourselves and for the generations that come after us. We all can do this. I'm gonna end this thing right quick. I don't remember what song I played back in 1983 where the Klansmen compared the style to Jerry Lee Lewis or whatever, but I do remember the style. I've been playing piano on and off for 32 years for the man who invented rock and roll, the great Charles Edward Anderson Berry, better known to most of you as Chuck Berry. And this is the kind of music I play behind him when he's playing Johnny B. Good or whatever on the guitar. Woo. Well, my book just went out of print last November, but it's being reissued and updated probably around the end of this year.
Good. My great-grandchildren can read it.
It's called Clandestine Relationships. Clandestine spelled with K.
Daryl, do you have time for a couple of questions? Okay, I got a hot mic. Who's got a question? Wave it, wave it, wave it.
It seemed to be a little disingenuous that you didn't let people that you were interviewing from the Klan know that you were black because you were aware of the prejudices that they held, and you kind of explained it to us because you said that if you let them know you were black, they wouldn't agree to the interview. So my question is, really, I mean, what you're really doing was deceptive, you know, to them. And you really felt that by being deceptive in that way, it was really respecting them? And I'm just a little I don't really understand that process in terms of rationalization of it.
Let me explain to you. First of all, thank you. I was not being deceptive to them, and I did not say that they would not interview with me if they knew I was black. I presumed that that might be an issue. But I also know the Klan mentality. And if I was being deceptive, I would have interviewed them over the phone, so that way they would never see that I'm black. They had the option, once they saw me, they see, oh, this is the black guy who's going to interview me. They could turn and walk away. Or they'd come in and do the interview. But I wanted them to be candid, because I know that if they know something in advance, they can prepare answers that they would have for a black interviewer that might differ from the answers they would give a white interviewer. So that way, if they didn't have that time to prepare, they could either say, I'm not talking to you, or come in and give me a candid response. So I don't feel that it was deceptive, because they did see me before I interviewed them. Sure.
Next question. And while I'm going to say something to that question too. It's part of white privilege. I see her over here, I see one. It's part of white privilege that we don't have to see. We can do everything out in the open. I mean, I know this because I benefit from white privilege. It's one of the things that I've been challenging about my own white experience is that I get all the privilege. I get to walk around and I never have to deceive. So that was my comment to add to that.
Hi, I wanted to know what would be a way to explain racism to a young child without causing fear or, I don't know, just without a negative impact to where it would, you know, to more educational.
By having more programs like this that discuss it and having open discussions. Thank you. By having more programs like this at an early age, you know, you don't have to wait to college to talk about it. You know, I do some of these things like in middle schools even, all right? But have more programs like this, not just in February for Black History Month, okay? People are black 12 months of the year, all right? You know, and women, your all's History Month is March. You all are women more than March, okay? We need to expand that and have these discussions openly. Talking about race is taboo in many communities. And the more we talk about it, the more accepting we can be. But when you don't talk about it, you try to avoid talking about it, then people get their own perceptions of what's going on and they become more and more fearful, and that builds up in them. So have these discussions, have them at an early age, you know, and make people understand that people may look different, they may worship different, but we all bleed the same, we all dress alike, we all go to school and read the same textbooks, we all can play together. And, you know, I had the benefit as a child, my parents were in the Foreign Service, so I lived overseas quite a bit. And I went to school, to international schools. My classes were filled with Nigerians, Italians, Russians, French, Japanese, German, whoever had an embassy there, all their kids went to school together. It was back in the early 60s. At the same time, my peers back home here were either going to newly integrated or still segregated schools. And it was just black kids and white kids. There was not the amount of diversity. So I saw what could work early on before I even realized what was going on. So have those discussions at an early age. One more?
Hi, great talk, thank you. I'm curious how your perceptions and your belief system changed through your interaction with the Klan.
Excellent question. I never set out, thank you very much, I never set out to convert anybody from the Klan. All I set out to do was find out, how can you hate me when you don't even know me? All right, because, you know, as a child, we all are taught a tiger doesn't change its stripes. A leopard doesn't change its spots. So I was not expecting anybody to change. I just wanted to know why you felt that way. And through the course of conversation, I saw things beginning to change in certain people. People who were adamantly very racist and very violent. And believe me, I've met some of the most violent people and racist people. And when they changed, that affected how I felt. I felt, whoa, I never expected this. You know, I'm onto something. I need to keep doing this, keep the conversation going. And sure enough, not everybody's going to change. We know people will go to their grave being violent and hateful. But for everybody that does change on their own, they affect somebody else. So that gave me hope. That's not what I envisioned when I first started writing this book. But when I saw that, that's how it affected me. And that's why I continue to do it long after the book is out. Thank you all very, very much.